Well, we got all of our leather all spread out, and now it's time to do some stamping work on it. I hope y'all can see this, but I've laid out where my borders go and where this piece, oopsie, well, this piece fits onto here. Laid out my borders using my dividers here. First, I laid out my stitch line, which is right there, and then I laid out where the border to my stamping is going to go. I'm just going to do a what do they call it? A basket weave stamp on this. Let me show you one. I'll show you this one. Basically like that. But first, I want to wet my leather. Now, even though on this one, I'm only going to stamp a little paw print right in the middle here, I want to wet the whole thing, because if you don't do that, you'll have a watermark. And since if you're dyeing it black, that's okay. But I'm not dyeing this black. It's going to be more of a brown or a light brown or a deep tan. Anyway, you'll see. But I want to stain the whole thing because that watermark will show if I don't. So I'm just going to wet both these nice and even. And then actually I'm going to let it sit and dry for a little while, because if it's too wet, the edges to the stamping won't be crisp. And to get the best stamping out of it, I like to let it dry until it's just right. It'll be close to the original leather color, but not quite. It'll be a little bit darker. So instead of sitting here watching leather dry, I'll be back. This one's pretty much ready to go. While you weren't looking, I already went ahead, got my adjustable creaser, and just put a line down the sides there, just to give it a little bit more interest, and just basically a flat piece of leather. And it's pretty much explanatory. It has a guide on it. It just guides it along the edge, so I can put a consistent crease line on it. Now the only other thing I'm going to do with this one is stamp a paw print right in the middle here. Yeah, I'm just going to eyeball that. And there you go. That's my mark. And on everything I make, I put a little I said it again, a little bear paw print on it. What I don't like is when maker marks, people put their maker marks on something and it's big and it's gaudy. I don't like the look of that. So I just put a little bear paw print on someplace that's kind of inconspicuous. Now we're going to go ahead and start on this. Let's see now. Let's see if I can darken this line. Yeah, it'll be alright. I'll darken this line a little bit so y'all can see what I'm doing. I just put a diagonal line across it. There you go. And that's going to be the basis of all the stamping for the basket weave that I'm going to do on this. I'm going to start somewhere right in the middle. Yeah, just eyeball it. And there's my first stamp. And all the other stamps are going to be based off of that one. But you can see how it follows that line. And then the next stamp will follow that one. And the little legs there are overlapping. That way the stamps can basically key off one another. I can't seem to talk today, but that's okay. I'll just put a few more in, and then we'll go from there. I'll flip it over. Now before you go to stamping something that you want to keep, I highly recommend doing a bunch of practice on scraps. Or if you're just starting out and you get yourself a hunk of leather like a double shoulder or something, there's always leather on there that's a bit rough. And you can cut that out, practice your stamping, or if you want to get into a leather carving, practice on that. You know, your stitching, all that stuff. Okay, there's my beginning. You can see how they keyed off one another. I'm going to keep going, and we'll come back when I'm a little bit further along.
Okay. I wouldn't dare go
Okay.
past with that.
Now, what you're going to come across as you're stamping along is places where a full stamp won't fit. So what do? Well, you angle the stamp, like right here. If I did a full stamp, I would go into this border, and I don't want to do that. So I angle the stamp this way and that way, and I stamp up close to it. I do that along this edge, and anywhere else where I need a partial stamp. One thing, don't rush this, don't be in a hurry, don't drink a bunch of coffee before you do this. Kind of get yourself into a calm, mellow, zen mood. Because this ain't something that you can do fast. Okay, here's another one. I can't fit a full stamp in there. So I'll take the stamp I have, and I'll angle it back and give it a, and that'll give me a partial stamp. What I'm going to do is, after I get all this stamping done, is come back with my border tool and stamp it all along the edge, and it'll make a nice border. And again, let me show you this. Like right there. That'll give you a nice border all along that stamped edge. Well, I'm going to continue, and we'll come back in a bit. Okay, I've got the border done across the top here, and again, that's where this piece is going to sit, like that. And as you can see, it's down this side. Next, I'm going to go along this side. I'm keeping my basket weave stamp handy in case I see something that can use a little bit of a touch-up, like right there. Or something along those lines. Now, to start my border, I first started out with a couple stamps down there at the tip. And of course, I'm going to just follow the line I scribed on here. Follow that line up, carefully setting the stamp before I go pounding on it with my mallet. Making sure they're all of similar depth. And index off of one another. Like I said, take your time. This is not a race. The more time and care you take with it, the better it's going to look in the end. And after all, isn't that what leatherwork's about? Making something useful that looks good too. When I started out doing this leatherwork, basically I just made stuff that was utilitarian. But then I learned some techniques and stuff to make it look good too. Well, I'm going to keep stamping along here. We'll be back in a little bit. Now when I get about that close to this end, what I'll do is I'll go to this end and I'll start pasting them off. Just because I want to keep my border stamp as even as I can. I just take it, push it into the leather a little bit, and they'll tell me, they'll show me the spacing so I can keep it even. Sometimes it'll be a little bit longer, sometimes it'll be a little bit shorter, and then I can fudge it just a little bit on each of the stamps to make it come out even. Okay, this one is coming up a little bit short, so that tells me I need to either, let's see, actually looks like if I stretch it a little bit, I'll come out even. So each stamp as I go along here, I'm going to stretch it out just a hair until I start coming out even. Not so much that you can notice it. If I do it just a little bit at a time, you'll never see it in the finished product. And I'm already pretty close. Don't want to overdo it now. Yep. If you make a misstamp, don't worry about it. Don't freak out about it. It's not the end of the world. Chances are, if you make a misstamp, it's pretty darn close to where you want it to be to begin with. And by the time the rest of the stamping's done, and the dye work's done, and the stitching's done, and all that stuff, you'll never notice it. Okay. That's my border done then. Next step up is to put some color on this thing. I'm going to sit here and pick at it, and if I see it doesn't look stamped deep enough, I'm going to go back and restamp it. I'm going to look over the basket weave and see how that looks, how the depth of it looks, and get all that done. Actually, it looks pretty damn good. Get all that done before I go to putting color on this thing. We'll see you then.